The air in California was warm that afternoon, the kind of warmth that carried memories of laughter, barbecues in the backyard, and the echoes of my son's childhood footsteps running across the patio tiles. I had built that home brick by brick, dream by dream. It was not just a house, it was my sanctuary, my legacy, the place where I believed my son would always feel safe. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the moment when my daughter-in-law stood before me with a smile that sliced deeper than any knife and said, "This house isn't yours anymore, it's ours." Those words did not just fall upon me, they crushed me. They cracked open the floor beneath my feet. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. My son was beside her, silent, shifting awkwardly, but not defending me, not correcting her. My breath caught in my chest, and all I could manage was a trembling. "What did you just say?" Her smile widened, cold and triumphant. "You heard me. This place belongs to us now. You can pack your things." That was the opening of my nightmare. I had spent years working to make sure this house stood strong. I had paid for every corner with my savings from a lifetime of sacrifice. Every sleepless night, every lesson taught at school, every extra hour of tutoring, every penny I tucked away had gone into this home so that my son could have security. When his father passed away, I promised him we would be okay, that the house would always be his inheritance, his future. But I never imagined my son would let his wife twist that promise into a weapon against me. I remember gripping the back of the chair to steady myself. My mind screamed for this to be a joke, some kind of misunderstanding, a cruel prank that would end in laughter. But the silence in the room told me it was not. My son avoided my eyes, his hands clenched at his sides. He was complicit in this. Betrayal. The day had begun so normally. I had prepared lunch, setting the table with the plates I had kept for special family gatherings. I had cooked his favorite dish, thinking we would sit down and share a meal like we used to. Instead, I was ambushed in my own home, stripped of dignity, stripped of belonging. My heart was pounding as I tried to process what was happening. I asked again, this time my voice shaking but louder. "This is my house. I bought it. I built it. I have lived here all my life. How dare you say it is yours?" My daughter-in-law's voice dripped with arrogance. "Because your son and I are married now. Things have changed. We are the family now. You had your time, but it is over. You should be grateful we are even letting you stay as long as we have." Her words struck me like a physical blow. I looked at my son, hoping him to speak up, to say this was wrong, to defend the bond we once shared. Instead, he lowered his gaze and muttered, "Mom, maybe it is time you think about moving somewhere smaller, somewhere more suitable." Suitable. That word cut me open. Suitable for what? For being old, for being disposable, for being pushed aside after everything I had given. I felt the room spin. My knees weakened, but I refused to fall. Not in front of them. Not when they stood there united against me. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tear down the walls I had built with my own hands. But I stayed silent, my strength channeled into holding back the flood of tears that burned at the corners of my eyes. They would not see me break. Instead, I turned and walked slowly to the mantel where family pictures lined the shelves. Photos of my son's first birthday, his high school graduation, the day he moved into college, memories frozen in frames. Proof of a life I had poured myself into. I picked one up, holding it tight against my chest. That was my evidence, my reminder that I was not imagining the love I once gave, the sacrifices I once made. Behind me, her voice continued, sharp and commanding. "We need space for our future. We plan to renovate to make this house ours completely. You cannot hold on to the past forever." I closed my eyes. The irony was unbearable. She called it her future, but it was my past, my blood, my sacrifice that gave them this foundation. Without me, there would be no house, no inheritance, no dream to build upon. I turned to face them again, my voice low but firm. "You may believe this house is yours, but you forget one thing. This place carries my name. This house knows who built it, and I am not leaving quietly." My son shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to his wife as if waiting for her to guide him. That was when I realized the depth of her control. He was no longer my son alone. He was hers now, wrapped in her influence, too weak to stand up for me. The betrayal burned through me like fire. But beneath that fire was something else. Something even stronger resolve. This was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning that night. After they retreated to their room, leaving me to sit alone in the living room that I had decorated with my own hands, I began to plan. I stared at the walls, the photos, the furniture, every corner of the house that whispered of my history, and I knew with absolute certainty that I would not let them erase me. They thought they had one. They thought their smile and their arrogance had stripped me of everything. They did not know me well enough. They did not understand the strength that came from being a woman who had built a life from nothing. I would take back everything, not just the house, but my dignity, my power, my legacy, and I would make sure they remembered this moment for the rest of their lives. Asterisk the next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. It was their laughter, not mine. A sound that once filled this house with comfort now sounded like mockery. My chest tightened as I sat up on the couch where I had fallen asleep. My back ached from the cushions, but the pain in my heart was heavier. I walked slowly into the kitchen, every step deliberate, my pride holding me upright. There they were, my son and his wife seated at the table I had polished for decades, sipping coffee as if nothing had happened the night before. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled at my sides. My daughter-in-law barely looked up. Instead, she slid a folder across the table, toward me. "We thought it was time you saw this." I froze. The folder lay there, plain and unassuming, yet it radiated a threat. I reached out and opened it. Inside were documents, legal papers. My heart skipped. At the top of the first page were the words that cut deeper than any insult. Transfer of ownership. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. It was all there, stamped and signed. My house, my sanctuary, the walls I had built, the memories I had poured into every brick, had been quietly signed away. I looked at my son, my voice breaking. "What is this? What have you done?" He could not meet my eyes. Instead, he stared into his coffee cup as if it held the answers he could not say aloud. His wife, however, was bold. "It is official. This house is under our names now. You do not need to worry about the burden anymore. You can move out without guilt." Burden. That word echoed in my head. After everything I had given, after every sacrifice, after every night spent working to keep the roof over our heads, I was now a burden. "Did you sign this?" I demanded, turning to my son. His silence was worse than an admission. My blood boiled. Rage and sorrow clashed inside me until I could barely breathe. "You betrayed me," I whispered. "Your own mother." His lips parted, but no words came. He looked like a boy again, cornered and ashamed. But the damage was already done. I slammed the folder shut and pushed it back. "Toward them, you may think you have taken my house, but you cannot erase the truth. You cannot erase me from these walls." Her smile returned, sharp and cruel. "Truth does not matter. Paperwork does. And the paperwork says this place belongs to us now." That was the moment something inside me hardened. My grief turned into a stone of resolve. They thought I was weak, broken, defeated. They did not know the strength of a mother who had built a life from nothing. I straightened my back and said calmly, "You made a mistake you will regret." Her laughter filled the kitchen, grating against my ears. "You should accept reality. Fighting us will only embarrass you. No one will take your side. You are old, tired, and alone. We are the future." Her arrogance was breathtaking, but it was also blinding. She thought I had no fight left. She underestimated me that afternoon. When they left the house together, I sat at the table, staring at the folder again. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Somewhere deep inside, a fire began to burn. I would not allow them to steal what was mine without a battle. I gathered the documents, carefully examining every line. I had lived too long, worked too hard to be dismissed like a useless object. If they wanted war, I would give them one. I pulled out my phone and dialed an old friend, Margaret. She had been by my side for decades, a neighbor, a confidant, and a lawyer who had seen more than her fair share of family betrayals. When she answered, her voice was warm. "It has been a while. How are you?" I hesitated, my throat tight. But then the words came pouring out. I told her everything, the confrontation, the folder, the betrayal. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking, but my heart felt lighter. There was silence on the line before Margaret spoke. "Listen to me carefully. Do not sign anything. Do not leave the house. Let me come over tonight. We will talk, and we will fight this. They think they are clever, but I know the law, and I know you. You are stronger than they realize." For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. When I hung up, I looked around the house, the photographs, the curtains I had sewn myself, the walls painted with memories. This was not just property, it was my life, and I would not let anyone erase it. But as night fell, something unexpected happened. My son knocked gently on my door. His face was pale, his eyes weary. He stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. "Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I did not want this. She pressured me. She said if I did not agree, she would leave me," I thought. I was protecting my marriage. My heart broke again, in a different way this time. He was still my son, still the boy I had raised, but he was trapped. chained by fear and manipulation. You chose her over me, I said softly. You let her steal everything I built. Do you realize what you have done? Tears filled his eyes, and for a moment I saw the little boy I had once held in my arms. I am sorry, Mom. I do not know how to fix it. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Then you need to decide who you are. A husband who obeys blindly, or a man who stands for what is right. You cannot be both. He left without answering, his silence heavy with conflict. As I sat alone again, I felt the weight of what lay ahead. My son was torn, my daughter-in-law was ruthless, and I was caught in the middle of a war I never asked for. But I was not afraid anymore. I whispered to myself, a vow that echoed through the silent house. They think they can take everything. They are wrong. I will fight. I will reclaim what is mine. And as the clock ticked past midnight, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this battle had only just begun. The morning after my son's midnight confession. The house felt heavy, almost suffocating. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, but it carried no warmth. I sat at the dining table with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the folder that had nearly broken me. The papers lay there like a snake, coiled and waiting to strike again. A sharp knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. I knew who it was before I even stood to answer. Margaret never needed to announce herself. Her presence always carried weight. When I opened the door, there she was, tall and commanding, her silver hair tied neatly back, her briefcase clutched firmly in her hand. Her eyes scanned my face, and in that instant, she knew everything without me saying a word. "Let me in," she said firmly, stepping past me into the living room. She set her briefcase on the table, pushed aside the coffee cup, and opened it. With precision, "Show me the papers," she demanded. I handed her the folder with shaking hands. She flipped through each page quickly, her sharp eyes catching every detail. Her lips tightened into a thin line. "This is serious," she muttered. "Too serious. These are not just empty threats." She went to a lawyer. She filed real documents. My chest tightened. "Are you saying they already own it?" "That it is gone." Margaret looked up at me, her gaze steady. "Not exactly. These papers are questionable. There are signatures here that could be challenged. But more importantly, do you realize how dangerous this is? If you had not called me, if you had left this house even for a short period, they could have locked you out permanently. You would have had nothing." The room seemed to spin. "They planned that." She nodded gravely. "Of course they did. This was not done overnight. This has been in motion for months, maybe longer. She manipulated your son, pushed him into signing, and now she wants to erase you." Erase me. That word dug into my heart like a knife. Margaret closed the folder with a sharp snap. "Listen to me. You cannot let them see fear. You cannot leave this house. From now on, every move you make has to be calculated. She is playing a game of power, and you must be ready to play it better." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" Her eyes narrowed. "We fight. We gather evidence. We challenge the documents. And most importantly, we expose her for who she really is. If she thinks she can intimidate you into surrender, she is about to learn the mistake of underestimating a woman who built everything with her own hands." Before I could reply, the front door opened. My son and his wife walked in carrying grocery bags, laughing together as if life were ordinary. When they saw Margaret, their expressions shifted. My daughter-in-law froze, her smile faltering. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice edged with suspicion. Margaret stood tall, exuding authority. "I am Margaret. I am here as a friend, and perhaps soon as legal counsel." My daughter-in-law's eyes narrowed. "Legal counsel? For what?" "There is no need for lawyers here." Her tone was sharp, defensive, but Margaret did not flinch. "That will be for the courts to decide." The tension in the room thickened instantly. My son looked uneasy, his eyes darting between us. "Mom, what is going on?" I rose to my feet, my voice steady and strong. "What is going on is that you tried to take my home behind my back, and now you will answer for it." The silence that followed was heavy. My daughter-in-law set down the grocery bags with a thud, crossing her arms defiantly. "You should be careful with your accusations. We only wanted what is best for you." Margaret laughed, cold and cutting. "Do not insult us with lies. I know exactly what you want to control, but you will not get it so icily." My daughter-in-law's face darkened. For a brief moment, I saw the mask slip. Her sweetness evaporated, replaced by a glint of malice in her eyes. She realized her plan was no longer hidden. She leaned closer, her voice low but venomous. "You are making a mistake. You cannot win against us. My family has influence, money, and connections. Do you really think anyone will believe you over us?" Her words were sharp, but they did not scare me anymore. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Do not let her intimidate you. The truth always finds its way to the surface. My son tried to speak, his voice weak. Please, can we not turn this into a war? Can we just talk about it calmly? His wife turned on him instantly, her glare silencing him. Stay out of this, she hissed. You already agreed to everything. Do not make it worse. The crack in their unity was clear. My son was torn, his guilt consuming him, but his wife's grip on him was strong. I saw it in the way he shrank. Beneath her gaze, Margaret gathered her things and stood tall. We will be in touch soon, but let me make one thing clear. This house is not yours to take, and you will regret underestimating us. With that, she walked out, her heels striking the floor with defiance. I followed her to the door, my heart pounding with adrenaline. Margaret, I whispered, what if she is right? What if they are too powerful? Margaret turned, her eyes fierce. Do not ever let her words sink into you. Power means nothing when it is built on lies. She will collapse under her own greed. But you must hold steady. You must not give her what she wants. When she left, I stood in the doorway, watching her car disappear down the street. Behind me, I heard footsteps. My daughter-in-law's voice followed, smooth and poisonous. You think a lawyer will save you? All she will do is drain your money. At the end of the day, this house will be ours. You should accept it now instead of humiliating yourself. I turned to face her, my voice calm, but steel ran through every word. You made one mistake. You forgot who you were dealing with. I am not afraid of you, and I will not surrender what is mine. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She smirked, but it did not reach her face. She turned away, muttering under her breath, but I caught it. This is just the beginning. That night, as the house grew quiet, I sat in my room, staring at the family photos on the wall. My son's innocent smile from childhood looked back at me, reminding me of the love that once filled these walls. I wondered how much of that boy was still inside him, buried under fear and manipulation. But one thing was clear, the battle lines had been drawn. Margaret was right. This was now a war. I whispered to the photos, to the walls, to the memories that lived in every corner of the house. They will not take you from me. I will fight until my last breath. And deep inside, I felt something awaken. Not just anger, but strength. A strength I had not tapped into in years. A strength that came from survival, from sacrifice, from motherhood itself. This was no longer just about a house. This was about dignity, legacy, and the truth. And I was ready. The next morning began not with birdsong, but with the shrill ring of my telephone. It was Margaret. Her voice was sharp, urgent, and carried a weight that made my chest tighten. Are you alone? She asked immediately. Yes, I whispered, clutching the phone. Good. Listen carefully. I spent half the night going through those documents, and I found something that changes everything. But you need to be ready for what I am about to tell you. I gripped the phone tighter. What did you find? Her tone lowered, deliberate and steady. The signatures, they are forged, at least 2 of them. I compared them with older records and they do not match. This was fraud, plain and simple. My heart raced. Fraud. That word slammed into me with both relief and terror. Relief that I was not crazy, that I had not signed away my life. Terror because it meant my daughter-in-law had crossed a line so dark it chilled me. Do you understand what this means? Margaret continued. If we take this to court, not only can we save your home, but we can expose her. Forgery is a crime. If proven, she could face prison. I staggered into a chair, my knees threatening to give way. Prison? For her? Could it really come to that? Before I could respond, I heard the front door open. My son's voice echoed through the hallway. Mom, are you up? Mom, are you up? Panic surged in me. I lowered my voice to a whisper. He is here. I have to go. Margaret's final words before I hung up were chilling. Do not say a word to them yet. Let them think you are still in the dark. Watch them. Every word, every action, we need more proof. And when the time comes, we strike. I hung up just as my son entered the room, his eyes wary. He carried a small bag of breakfast pastries, setting them down as if nothing were wrong. Thought you might want something? To eat? He said softly. I looked at him carefully. There was guilt written across his face, but also fear. He avoided my gaze, fumbling with the bag. Sit down, I said firmly. He hesitated, then obeyed, sitting across from me. For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Finally, I asked, why did you let her do this? Why did you let her try to take everything from me? His shoulders slumped. He rubbed his hands together nervously. I did not know it would go this far. She said it was just paperwork, that it was to make things easier for the future. I did not want to upset you, Mom. I thought it was harmless. Harmless? My voice cracked. You let her forge my name. You let her try to steal the house I built with your father. That is not harmless. That is betrayal. His eyes widened. What do you mean, Forge? She said you signed those papers. I leaned closer, my voice low and unwavering. I did not, and you know I did not. She lied to you. She used you. And now you are caught in the middle of her scheme. His face went pale. For the first time, I saw the truth sinking in. He had been blinded, manipulated, and now the veil was lifting before he could speak. His wife appeared in the doorway, her smile thin and cold. What are you two whispering about? The air in the room shifted instantly. My son flinched, his courage shrinking under her gaze. I straightened, meeting her eyes with fire. We were talking about lies, I said clearly. The lies you told, the lies you built your entire scheme upon. She froze for a moment, then forced a laugh. Lies. Oh, please. You are just confused. You are too old to remember what you signed. Her words were meant to cut, but they only fueled my resolve. Careful, I warned. The truth has a way of revealing itself. And when it does, you will regret underestimating me. For the first time, I saw her mask crack, just slightly. A flicker of worry crossed her face before she regained composure. She turned to my son. Do not listen to her. She is just trying to divide us. But I saw something new in my son's eyes. Doubt, the seed Margaret planted, had taken root, and it was growing. That afternoon, while they busied themselves in the kitchen, I slipped away to my study. I opened an old wooden box where I kept letters, documents, and family records. My hands trembled as I sifted through decades of memories, searching for proof of my true signature. I found 8 old notarized documents signed years ago. I compared it to the forged papers. The difference was undeniable. I took photos of everything, my heart pounding. Margaret was right. We had evidence. Solid evidence. As I tucked the documents back into the box, I heard footsteps behind me. My daughter-in-law stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowing as she spotted the papers in my hand. What are you doing? She demanded. I turned slowly, holding her gaze, protecting myself. She stepped closer, her tone dropping to a dangerous whisper. If you think you can win, you are mistaken. My family will crush you. You will end up with nothing, not even your dignity. Her words were venom, but I no longer trembled. Instead, I felt a calm strength rise within me. You should be more careful with threats. They tend to backfire, she sneered, then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. That night, I called Margaret again. I told her everything, the confrontation, the threats, the signatures. She listened carefully, then said, Good, we have her cornered. Now we wait for her to make her next mistake. And trust me, she will. I hung up, my heart both heavy and determined, as I prepared for bed. I passed the framed photograph of my late husband on the mantel. His kind eyes looked back at me, and I whispered to him, I will not let them destroy what we built. I promise you that. In that moment, I felt his presence, steady and reassuring. The fight ahead would not be easy, but I was no longer afraid, because now the truth was on my side, and soon the whole world would know it. Asterisk, the house felt colder than usual that morning, not from the weather, but from the tension that had settled into every corner of its walls. Every creak of the floorboard, every whisper of wind against the windows reminded me that my home was no longer safe, that it had been invaded not just by lies, but by malice. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee in front of me. My son walked in, his face pale, his eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. He did not speak at first. He just poured himself a cup, sat down opposite me, and let out a long, weary sigh. Mom, he said finally, his voice low, I need to know the truth. Did you really never sign those papers? I looked him straight in the eye. I swear. To you, I never signed them. What you are holding is a forgery. Your wife tricked you as much as she tried to trick me. He flinched, the words cutting deeper than I expected. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted the coffee cup to his lips. I believed her. I thought she was helping us secure the future. I thought you were just being stubborn. But now I do not know what to believe. You already know, I said firmly. That is why you are asking. Deep down, you have always known I would never sign away your father's house without a word. She is using you, and if you do not open your eyes soon, she will destroy not only me but you too. Before he could reply, the sharp clicking of heels filled the hallway. His wife entered, her expression perfectly composed, but her eyes held daggers. She carried her phone in one hand, typing quickly before setting it down on the counter. What are we discussing so seriously? She asked, her tone deceptively sweet. Truth, I said simply. She raised an eyebrow, smirked, then leaned against the counter. Truth is subjective. People remember what they want, sign what they want, and later regret it. But regret does not undo a signature. I felt my blood boil. You forged my name. That is not subjective. That is a crime." Her smirk faltered. For a split second before she recovered, she turned to my son, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Do not let her poison you against me. You know I would never do something illegal." She is confused. She is trying to drive a wedge between us because she cannot stand losing control. The word control echoed through the kitchen like a poisoned dart. My son looked torn, caught between loyalty and doubt. I knew in that moment that if I did not act soon, she would bury the truth so deep that he might never crawl out of her grasp. That afternoon, I met Margaret at a small cafe downtown. I slid the photos of the forged signatures. Across the table, my hands shaking slightly, she examined them with her sharp eyes, then nodded. "This is strong evidence," she said, "but it is not enough on its own. Judges do not just take pictures as proof. We need corroboration. Witnesses, experts, someone who can confirm without a doubt that this was forged." I leaned forward. "How do we get that?" She smiled faintly. "That is where strategy comes in. I know someone, a retired notary who has worked with your family before. If she examines these papers, she can testify to the differences in your signature. And if she testifies, this case will explode." My heart pounded. "And what happens to her?" Margaret's eyes hardened. "If the court rules against her, she could face charges: fraud, forgery, possibly even conspiracy if others were involved." The thought of my son's wife behind bars sent a shiver down my spine. Part of me wanted justice, but part of me feared what it would do to my son. "I do not want to destroy him," I whispered. Margaret's voice softened. "Sometimes the truth destroys people all on its own. Your job is not to protect her lies. Your job is to protect yourself." Later that week, Margaret arranged a private meeting at her office. She asked me to bring my son. She wanted him to hear the truth from a neutral voice, to see the evidence laid bare. I agreed, hoping desperately that this would finally open. His eyes, when we arrived, the retired notary, Mrs. Whitaker, was already there. She was a sharp, elderly woman with glasses perched on the edge of her nose. She greeted me kindly, then got straight to work. She laid out the forged papers along with authentic samples of my signature from past documents. With precise care, she began pointing out the differences: the slant of the letters, the uneven pressure, the unnatural flow of the writing. "Whoever did this," she said matter-of-factly, "had practice. But not enough. This is a forgery, plain as day." My son's face went white. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the papers as though they were burning his soul. Margaret leaned forward. "Do you understand what this means?" She asked him. He did not answer at first. Finally, he whispered, "It means she lied to me." The words cracked something inside him. He buried his face in his hands, and for the first time I saw real despair. Not anger or denial, but before the meeting ended, the door burst open. His wife stood there, her eyes blazing with fury. "You had me followed," she spat at Margaret. "You think you can drag me into your little schemes?" Margaret's voice was calm, almost serene. "No one followed you. But when people lie, the truth has a way of finding them." She stormed into the room, snatching the forged papers from the table. "This proves nothing. Anyone can say a signature is fake. You are all against me. All of you. Against me. All of you." I stood, my voice rising with years of restrained strength. "No, not all. Just the truth. And the truth will not go away, because you shout at it." Her eyes narrowed into slits. She looked at my son, who still sat trembling, torn between us. Then she leaned down, whispering into his ear, though I could hear every word. "If you betray me now, you will regret it. You will lose me. You will lose everything we built, and you will be nothing." He looked up at her, his eyes wet with tears. Maybe I already lost everything. Her face drained of color. For the first time, she looked afraid. Truly afraid. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Silence followed. My son sat frozen, shaking his head slowly. What have I done? How did I let this happen? I placed a hand on his. "You were blinded by love, but now you see. And once you see the truth, you cannot go back." Margaret leaned forward, her tones steady. "The next step is simple. We file a case, we present the evidence. We protect your rights before she tries to destroy them again." I looked at my son, waiting. This was his choice as much as mine. Finally, with a broken voice, he whispered, "Do it." That night, as I walked back into my house, I felt the storm gathering. The fight was only beginning, but now I was no longer alone. My son had chosen the truth, and Margaret was ready to fight by my side. I stood in the hallway, staring at the framed photograph of my late husband. I whispered, "We will not let her win. I will protect what we built, no matter the cost." And, in the silence of the night, I felt the weight of the battle ahead. A storm was coming, but this time I was prepared to face it head-on, because lies crumble under the weight of truth, and when the storm finally breaks, only one side will be left standing. The summons arrived on a gray morning, sealed in a thick white envelope. My hands trembled as I held it, knowing this piece of paper marked the beginning of a battle that would decide everything: my home, my son's future, and the truth itself. Margaret had moved quickly. Within days of our meeting with the notary, she filed the case. Now, a date was set for the first hearing. I sat at the dining table with the envelope in front of me. My son stood by the window, staring out as though the world outside held answers he could not find inside himself. He had barely spoken since his wife's furious outburst in Margaret's office. Finally, he turned to me. "Mom, I am scared." I nodded slowly. "So am I, but fear is what she counts on. If we let it stop us, she wins." His voice cracked. "What if she drags my name through the mud? What if she says I was part of this?" I reached for his hand. "Then we fight harder. You made a mistake believing her, but you are not her accomplice. The truth will protect you, and if it does not, then I will." The first hearing was set in a courtroom that smelled faintly of dust and varnished wood. The walls echoed with whispers of cases past, of battles fought and lost. I felt small walking in, but Margaret's steady stride reminded me that this was not a place for fear. This was a place for truth. My son's wife sat across the room, flanked by her attorney. She was dressed immaculately in a tailored suit, her hair pulled back. In a severe bun, she looked every bit the picture of control, but I could see the stiffness in her shoulders, the way her fingers tapped nervously on her lap. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, called the case to order. Margaret stood, her voice calm but commanding. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Eleanor Hart, has been the victim of forgery and fraud. The property in question, her late husband's house, has been unlawfully transferred through falsified documents. We will present clear evidence, including expert testimony, to prove these signatures were forged." Her words cut through the air like a blade. Across the room, my daughter-in-law's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, these claims are baseless. The documents were signed willingly. This is nothing more than an attempt by Mrs. Hart to undo a decision she now regrets. We will prove that her signature is authentic." The judge nodded, her expression unreadable. "Proceed." The first witness was Mrs. Whitaker, the retired notary. She spoke with the calm precision of someone who had spent a lifetime examining documents. She pointed out the inconsistencies in the signature, the unnatural strokes, the signs of hesitation that betrayed a forgery. The courtroom was silent as she finished. The judge leaned forward. "In your professional opinion, are these signatures authentic?" Mrs. Whitaker's voice was firm. "No, Your Honor, they are forgeries." A ripple went through the courtroom. My daughter-in-law shifted uncomfortably, but her lawyer quickly rose. "Objection, Your Honor. This is one opinion. We will bring our own handwriting expert to refute these claims." The judge allowed it, and the hearing adjourned with a date set for the next session. As we left the courtroom, my son's wife brushed past me, her voice low but venomous. "Enjoy your little victory. It will not last." Margaret leaned close. "To me, she is rattled. That is good. But she will not stop here. She will dig deeper, play dirtier. You must be ready." And dirty she played. Days later, rumors began to circulate. People whispered that I was losing my mind, that grief had driven me into paranoia, that I was inventing lies to cling to a house I could no longer manage. My son heard it from colleagues. I heard it at the market. Even old friends began to look at me differently, their eyes filled with quiet doubt. I knew who was behind it. She was poisoning the well before the next hearing, trying to paint me as unstable. Margaret advised me to stay calm, but I could not ignore the gnawing fear. What if the judge believed her? What if the court decided I was nothing more than a bitter old woman lashing out? The night before the second hearing, I sat awake, staring at the documents spread across the table. My late husband's handwriting on old letters, my true signatures on bank forms, the fake papers with my name distorted and twisted. I whispered to the empty room, "Help me, Robert. Show me what I am missing." And then it happened. I noticed something strange on the forged documents. A date. The transfer date was set on a day when I was in the hospital for surgery. My signature claimed I had signed while lying unconscious in recovery. My hands shook as I called Margaret immediately. She answered on the second ring. "What is it?" "Look at the date," I said breathlessly. "I was in the hospital. I could not have signed anything. There are medical records to prove it." Silence followed. Then Margaret's voice hardened. "That is it. That is the nail in the coffin." The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with tension. My daughter-in-law sat stiffly, her lawyer whispering frantically in her ear. Margaret stood with calm authority. "Your Honor," she said, "we present new evidence." The supposed date of signing was during a time my client was hospitalized for major surgery. Medical records confirmed she was under anesthesia and physically incapable of signing any document. Gasps filled the room. The judge's eyes narrowed as she turned to the other side. "How do you explain this?" My daughter-in-law's lawyer stammered, fumbling with his notes. But before he could answer, the judge raised her hand. "Enough. This is deeply troubling. I am ordering a forensic investigation into these documents and the circumstances of their execution." My daughter-in-law's face went pale. Her hands clutched the edge of the table as though the ground was slipping beneath her feet. But then came the twist. As the hearing ended, a man in the back of the courtroom stood up. He wore a dark suit, his face partially shadowed, but when he spoke, his voice carried through the room. "Your Honor, I request permission to speak. I have information relevant to this case." The judge frowned. "State your name." "My name is Daniel Ross. I am a paralegal who worked briefly for the opposing counsel. I have evidence that these documents were altered and that Mrs. Hart's daughter-in-law orchestrated the forgery with full knowledge." The room erupted in whispers. My son's wife froze, her face ashen. The judge slammed her gavel. "Order in the court. Mr. Ross, you will present your evidence formally. This case just took a very serious turn." I stood frozen, my heart racing. An unexpected ally had appeared from the shadows. Someone who claimed to hold the proof we needed. Margaret leaned close to me, her voice steady but charged. "This is bigger than we thought." She was not working alone, and now the truth is going to unravel piece by piece. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I realized something profound. This was no longer just about a house. This was about survival, about justice, about pulling the mask off someone who had built her life on lies. The storm had broken and the winds were fierce, but I was no longer the frail woman she thought she could manipulate. I was ready to fight. And now the truth itself was fighting alongside me, because when shadows are dragged into the light, they burn. And she was about to burn. The courtroom air still lingered in my lungs long after we left that day. I could not shake the image of the man in the back, Daniel Ross, standing and declaring he held proof. His words replayed in my mind like a drumbeat. Evidence. Forgery. Orchestrated that night. I barely slept. My son paced the living room, wringing his hands until his skin turned red. "Mom," he whispered, "what if this man is lying? What if it is some trap?" I looked at him and saw the frightened boy he once was. The boy who clung to me when storms shook the windows of our old house. Then we prepare for both possibilities. If he is telling the truth, he is our salvation. If he is lying, then we must expose him to Margaret. Called early the next morning. Her tone was sharp and brisk, the way she always sounded when victory was within reach, but danger lingered close. "I spoke with Mr. Ross," she said. "Then it is perjury and he risks prison. A man does not take that chance unless he is desperator, unless he has nothing left to lose." We arranged to meet him in Margaret's office that afternoon. I arrived with my son beside me, both of us tense, bracing for whatever storm might break open. Daniel Ross was younger than I expected. Mid-30s, sharp features, tired eyes. He carried a black leather briefcase that seemed to weigh more than it should. When he set it on the table, his hands trembled slightly. "I should not even be here," he began, his voice low. "If they find out, I lose everything." But I could not stomach what I saw. "Your daughter-in-law, she knew the documents were—" "I have proof." He opened the briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. Printed emails, some with her name in bold. Transcripts of conversations he claimed to have recorded. And then the drafts, multiple versions of the property transfer with notes in the margins. In one, her handwriting was clear. "Make sure signature looks smoother. She will notice if it is shaky." My son gasped as though struck. His hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. "This," Margaret said, scanning the papers with rapid precision, "is enough to bury her if it holds up. But you need to understand, Mr. Ross, if you testify, you will be targeted. You may lose your career." Daniel's eyes darkened. "I already lost my career the moment I refused to keep quiet. They blacklisted me. No firm will touch me now. This is all I have left, telling the truth." It was noble, painfully noble, but part of me hesitated. Why now? Why step forward only when the case was already unraveling? As if reading my thoughts, Daniel leaned closer to me. "I know what you are thinking. Why would I do this? The answer is simple. I had a father once. He was cheated out of his land by men like her. He died bitter and broken. I promised myself if I ever saw someone trying the same trick, I would not stay silent." Something in his voice cut through me. That morning, the courtroom brimmed with tension. Reporters lingered outside, sensing a scandal. Inside, my daughter-in-law sat rigid, her face pale but her jaw clenched. She radiated fury like a furnace barely contained. When Daniel took the stand, the silence was suffocating. His voice, though low, carried across the room. He laid out everything: the emails, the drafts, the conversations. He explained how he had been tasked with preparing the documents, how he noticed the irregularities, how he had been told to smooth out the forgery so it would not raise suspicion. Who gave those instructions? The judge asked. Daniel looked directly at my daughter-in-law. She did. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Her lawyer jumped up, objecting furiously, claiming hearsay, claiming fabrication. But Margaret countered with the documents, the handwriting analysis, the recordings, piece by piece. As her lawyer grilled Daniel, my daughter-in-law suddenly stood up. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. Enough. He is lying because I refused him. The room erupted. The judge slammed her gavel, demanding order. What do you mean? The judge asked sharply. She glared at Daniel, venom dripping from her words. He wanted me. He begged me to leave my husband and be with him. When I refused, he swore he would destroy me. This is his revenge. Gasps spread like wildfire. My son leaped to his feet, his face flushed with shock and rage. That is a lie, he shouted, his voice cracking. But her words had done their damage. Whispers swept through the room. Doubt flickered in the judge's eyes. Daniel froze, his face pale. That is not true, he said firmly, but I saw the cracks in his composure. She had struck where it hurt most: his credibility. The hearing adjourned in chaos. Margaret's lips were a thin, grim line as we left. She is dangerous, she muttered. She will twist anything, use anything. We must be ready for her next move. At home that evening, my son sat across from me, his hands shaking. Mom, she is destroying everything. What if the judge believes her? I took a deep breath. Then we give them something stronger. Truth does not waver. Lies always trip over themselves. And yet, even as I said it, a shadow of fear gnawed at me. Because in that moment I realized the twist was not over. The next day an envelope arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it was a photograph, grainy, but clear enough. It showed Daniel and my daughter together, sitting in a cafe. Had Daniel lied to us all along, weaving his story into our fight for reasons I could not see? The suspense twisted tighter. My son stared at the photo, his face pale. Mom, he whispered, what if she is telling the truth? I looked at the picture again, my heart torn between instinct and doubt. Something inside me whispered she was playing another game. But I could not deny the image. And that was when I realized the war had moved beyond the courtroom. This was psychological now. She wanted to break us, to divide us, to turn our allies into enemies. But I had been underestimated. I would not let it happen again. I folded the photo carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and set it on the table. Then we find out the truth. We dig deeper than ever. If this is her trap, we will spring it on her. And if Daniel has betrayed us, then he will burn with her. Margaret called that evening. I told her about the photo. She was silent for a moment. Then her voice turned sharp. This is not coincidence. She is scared. When liars panic, they plant seeds of doubt. We will not let her win. But Eleanor, brace yourself. The next round will be brutal. As the night fell, I stood by the window looking out at the shadows creeping across the lawn. The battle lines had shifted. The truth was no longer simple. Allies could be traitors, traitors could masquerade as saviors. But one thing remained clear. I was not finished. I would not bow. Because a woman who has lost everything is dangerous. But a woman fighting for the last piece of her soul is unstoppable. And she had just pushed me to that edge. Asterisk, the silence in the house felt like a living thing. The walls, which once echoed with laughter, warmth, and the clinking of family dinners, now hummed with tension so thick it nearly pressed against my chest. I sat at the dining table, staring at the polished wood surface, my fingers tracing the grain as if I could find answers carved into its lines. It felt like anything but mine. I thought back to the moment she said it. This house isn't yours anymore, it's ours. Her words had sunk into me like knives, deliberate and cold. I had saved, planned, and given up dreams so that he could live his and. When I helped buy this house, I believed it was an investment for our family's future, a way to ensure he would never struggle the way I did. But now, with every passing day, I felt like an unwelcome guest. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting lines across the floor, and I realized I was shaking. My hands trembled not just from age but from betrayal. How had things reached this point? How had the boy I once carried in my arms, the boy whose scraped knees I kissed better, grown into a man who could stand silently by while his wife erased me from my own sacrifice? I got up slowly, my legs stiff but determined. Today would be different. Today I needed answers. Asterisk, by afternoon, I heard the door open. Their laughter filled the hallway before they even stepped into the kitchen. I asked, my voice steady but sharper than usual. She glanced at me, her smile not faltering, but her eyes hardened. Very much. We were looking at some new furniture for the living room. Something more our style. Our style. The words rang with ownership, dripping with possession. My son walked in behind her, avoiding my gaze as though he already knew a storm was brewing. He put the keys on the counter and said quietly, "Mom, let's not start. But I was already standing tall, my heart pounding, my chest rising and falling with a rhythm that betrayed the storm inside me. Not start, I repeated, my voice rising. I gave you everything I had, everything, and you both walk around here like I'm invisible, like my blood, my sweat, my years don't count." His wife set the bag down slowly, her lips curling into a smile that carried no warmth. "You gave it, that means it's ours. You can't keep hanging onto it like some leash around our necks. We're adults now. We deserve our space." Her words twisted like knives again, but this time I didn't stagger. I stood firm, staring her down. "You think space means pushing me out? You think independence means erasing me? I didn't raise my son to stand in silence while someone rewrote history in front of him. I didn't raise him to become this." For the first time in weeks, he looked at me directly. His eyes were heavy, tired, filled with something between shame and defiance. "Mom, stop. You're making it worse. Why can't you just let us live?" The crack in his voice nearly broke me. Nearly, but I couldn't back down. "Not anymore. Live," I shot back. "You are living in a house I paid for. You are living a life built on my sacrifices. And now you stand here, telling me to let you live, while your wife tells me this isn't mine anymore. If this is living, then you've both forgotten the meaning of family." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. His wife crossed her arms, smirking like she had won some private battle, but I wasn't finished. "You want me to let you live?" I asked, my voice lowering, cold and sharp. "Then let me remind you of something. Nothing in this world comes free. Nothing you have today would exist without me. And if you think I'll be erased so easily, you're very wrong." Her smirk faltered for the first time, just slightly, and I caught it. I leaned forward across the counter, my eyes locked on hers. "You may have convinced him that I'm in the way, but do not forget this house, this life, the money that built ITT carries my name in every brick, and I can take it back as easily as I gave it." The silence cracked like glass. My son's eyes widened, fear flickering across his face. His wife's smirk melted into a frown, and she stepped forward. "You wouldn't dare." I let the words hang, heavy, deliberate. I could see it in his eyes, the little boy, who once looked up to me, now trapped in the grip of a woman who saw me as competition. "Mom, please," he whispered, but I raised my hand. "No," I said firmly. "This is not about me begging for a place in my own family. This is about respect. This is about truth. And if I have to show you both what happens when you betray the one person who stood by you through everything, then so be it." Thick with papers, the very proof of what I had done to make this house theirs. I laid it on the counter with a sharp thud. "This is the truth," I said, my voice echoing in the kitchen. "Every dollar, every sacrifice, every signature. All mine." "Then tell me to my face that none of this matters. Tell me to my face that I mean nothing." Neither of them spoke. My son looked as though the weight of the world had just landed on his shoulders. His wife looked pale, her hands trembling ever so slightly. I stood tall, my chest heaving, my voice breaking yet filled with fire. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." Lighter, almost unnervingly. So it was as if the walls, which had once been so heavy with the unspoken, had somehow ... exhaled. I knew it was a lie. They were still there, the quiet judgments, the unfinished conversations. I hadn't heard from my son or his wife all night. They'd left for work before I could say a word. I found myself drawn to the kitchen, the one place I used to feel at ease, but something was wrong. The space felt smaller, the air thicker. I turned to the fridge and froze. A note. "Care of everything. Don't worry about us." That was it. The words felt like a slap. There was no apology, no explanation. Moving out from the house that I built, I was taken aback for a moment. The audacity, the finality. It was like they had never even considered what their actions would do to me, to us. But as I stood there, seething with frustration, something else began to twist inside me. This was no longer about the house. It was about my son, the boy I raised, the boy I loved. I didn't want to face the truth, but there it was, staring me down. I had raised a son who didn't have the spine to stand by me, who had allowed himself to be manipulated so easily. The boy who once ran to me with scraped knees now had the nerve to turn his back when I needed him most. I crumpled the note in my fist, a hot wave of emotion flooding my chest. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Asterisk. I waited for them that evening. I knew they would come back. They always did, like clockwork. I needed to face them to make them understand what they were doing. What they had already done? The sun had barely begun to set when I heard the front door open. His shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world rested on them. Behind him, his wife stepped in with that same smile plastered across her face, the one that had never quite reached her eyes. But I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. "You're leaving?" I said, my voice a low, sharp edge. My son froze, and for a second I thought I saw guilt flicker across his face, but it disappeared just as quickly. His wife stepped forward, smirking. "Yes," she said, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. "We've decided it's time for us to move on. We can't stay here, not with everything that's happened. It's unhealthy, unhealthy." The word hung in the air like poison. "Unhealthy," I repeated. "You want to talk about unhealthy?" Her eyes narrowed. "It's not your life anymore. It's ours now. We're moving forward. You can either accept that or stay stuck in the past. This is not just your life, not just your house, and I'll make sure you understand that." My son finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Mom, please, I don't want to fight. Let us go. It's better this way." I shook my head. "You don't get to just walk away. I raised you to know better." He looked at me with exhaustion in his eyes, as if I were the one holding him captive. "You're not holding me captive, Mom. I can't keep living in this tension. We're trying to move on." For a moment, the air seemed to stand still. Then I saw it. The crack. The small, barely visible flicker of doubt in his eyes. For a split second, I thought he might say something, anything to make it right. But then his wife spoke again. Nodded. My heart pounding. "Fine, but no, this once you walk out that door, don't come back. Don't come looking for a place to hide when things go wrong." They both stared at me, unsure how to respond. The door closed behind them, and I stood there alone again. But this time, I wasn't broken. Been before. I walked through the hallways, each step reverberating in the vast emptiness. The rooms I had once filled with laughter and warmth now seemed cold, abandoned, just like me. But there was something different now. A shift. A quiet strength that had settled into my bones like an old friend. They'd left, just as they'd promised. The furniture they'd picked, the things that made the house theirs, gone. The walls still stood. The memories still lingered. It wasn't about the things I had built for them. It was about who I was, who I had been, and who I had become. I had spent so many years giving without question, without expecting anything in return. I had sacrificed pieces of myself until there was nothing left to give. The sacrifices I made, I had forgotten to live for me. The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, snapping me from my thoughts. I read the words, the emptiness behind them, and then, for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. Peace settle over me. The truth was, they had already moved on. But now, it was my turn. I placed the phone down and turned away from the screen, staring at the photo of our family on the wall. The faces in the picture, frozen in time, no longer felt like my own. It was as if I were looking at strangers, but I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was free, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I was letting go of them, not because I had won some battle, but because, for the first time in my life, I was finally choosing myself, and that was enough. The door clicked shut behind me as I stepped into the evening air, a light breeze lifting the strands of my hair. I was ready to reclaim my life, ready to build something new, something entirely for me. The world outside was vast, and for the first time it didn't seem so frightening. It was a beginning, not an ending, and as the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, I took my first step into the unknown, knowing this time I wouldn't be looking back.